Sure, you can always shop around for flooring, but in the end, it all leads back to the one place you probably should have started, the experts at Carpet One. Save yourself the time and the hassle and let Carpet One help you find the right product at the right price. Beautifully installed, guaranteed. Come see the One, Carpet One, on the Business Loop in Columbia.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Friday, July the 15th. And I've got singer, songwriter, storyteller, Larry Brown with us today.
Good morning,
Good to have
Paul.
you here,
Good
Larry.
morning.
What do we got, a song or a story today?
It's a story about a summertime adventure on my bicycle.
Oh, so this goes back to your youth.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
In my prime.
Right. So we've got Larry Brown with a story for us and a bicycle.
Now, my Uncle Davy was about 10 years older than I, and he kept passing down things that he outgrew. And when he went into high school, I got some of the things he had, an electric train, I got a BB gun. But when he left high school, then I was getting more valuable objects. And the most important was a Schwinn bicycle. It was one of those Phantom Cruisers. It was a B-17 model, 26-inch balloon tires. Oh, it was gorgeous. It was green. It had a tank in the middle. It had chrome fenders and chain guard. It was the fork spring model, so it had the spring coil springs on the front and behind this leather seat and saddlebags. It was a road bike. Now, it was a little too big for me when I first started, so I had to grow into it. But once I did, boy, I hit the road, well, the streets. And actually, as I got older and was a teenager, my parents let me take it out on the road. In fact, I even had some overnight adventures. But that bike, I'll tell you, when I got out on the road, I felt like a road warrior. It was about that same time out in southwestern Nebraska and northeastern Kansas that the railroads were undergoing changes. They'd taken out the old Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy route from the river bottom and moved it up north, and the old C&O Railroad had been abandoned. And I had an idea. I bet I could ride my bike on the rails. I mean, literally. Those balloon tires would fit just perfectly on one rail of the railroad. So I designed a little cross arm that would hold it connected to that other rail, and then a little apparatus that hooked it onto this rail, so that bike would almost stand on one rail by itself. And riding on an old railroad rail, no hills, smooth, I could get up to 20, 30 miles an hour and no obstacles. Now, I'd fashioned that cross arm and those little brackets so that they had hinges on it so I could fold them back under when I was out on the road. Well, the day came, I'd tested it on the old Burlington Railroad, and that was great, but I really wanted to get down on the old B&O, because on the B&O was this long railroad trestle, a bridge that was nearly a mile long, and at its highest point over the Prairie Dog River was nearly 200 feet from the top of the trestle down to the water. Oh, that would be an adventure. Well, I rode my bike down there. I'd made arrangements with my parents. I had overnight equipment with me, and they said I'd never be too far away from some farm family that they knew, so it was all cleared with them. Well, I hit that rail, and it was smooth sailing. But as I was speeding down the railroad, probably 20 or 25 miles an hour, a mountain lion came down, saw me, and began to give chase. Now, occasionally those mountain lions would follow the deer down onto the plains, and I had never seen one up close and personal, and it was after me. But of course, I was so fast on that bike, and it was running behind me in between the rails on the ties, and I was keeping ahead of it, but it jumped out to the side and was running along beside and got ahead of me. But no problem. I reached back and pulled on that 1.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton lawnmower that I'd mounted on the back and fixed up a little thing on an extra sprocket. And when it took off, I was ahead of that mountain lion, but it sped up and parked itself on the rail in front of me. Well, I realized I was going so fast and I couldn't slow down and stop, and I hit that mountain lion. Well, actually, I hit him with the bracket that held me on the rail, and it knocked the mountain lion off to the side and kept me going. Well, I couldn't slow down, and I turned the engine off, but I was going so fast, and then I saw the railroad crew. They were there, little to my knowledge, dismantling that old bridge, and they were howling and screaming just as I went out into midair. You know, when crisis like that, an accident happens, it's as if time stands still. Well, I took advantage of that, and I was able to reach into the backpack where I had a tarp and some ropes tied to it that I was going to use for camping. So I fashioned myself an umbrella by tying those ropes to the bicycle, and down we went. But my descent was pretty fast. I needed to lighten the load, so I reached in the toolbox that I had up in the basket ahead, got out my tools, unhooked the engine, threw it down, hoping to hit the mud bank on the side of the river. And that gave me enough buoyancy that I was slowing down. But then my parachute got tangled in the apparatus of the bridge, and there I was hanging still nearly 100 feet off the water. Well, I was concerned about my safety, but primarily the safety of my pet turtle, Shelbert, who'd gone along for the ride and was in the cage. But quickly I took off my red bandana, untied the shoelaces on my shoes, fashioned a parachute for him, and sent him to safety. But there I was, dangling. But I realized that my parachute was caught in the framework of the bridge. All I had to do was climb up one of the ropes and untie the other 3 ropes, and then come back down, and by tying and retying those ropes, I could lower myself even closer to the water within about 60 feet, and then I could drop safely. With those balloon tires, I probably could float, or if I hit the mud bank, those springs on that bike would save me. Well, that's what I thought, but that was not what those guys in the John boat fishing on the river below me thought. They'd gone out into the middle to rescue me when I fell, but when I started coming down for them after I untied the rope, they jumped out of their boat and swam to the shore, which was a good thing because I landed right on that John boat and hit the back of the boat, and the front of the boat went up, and just like a surfboard, I went right into the bank and was able to pedal right off that boat onto the bank. Well, at that point, the fishermen were standing on the bank waving and cheering, and I noticed that the railroad crew was. Well, they weren't waving and cheering at my dramatic rescue. They were hollering at the mountain lion who was coming down toward me right at the same time. Then I spotted my Briggs & Stratton engine. I quickly got my toolbox out of the basket, put that engine back on, tightened up the belt, and sped off, spotting Shelbert there with his red bandana waving like a rescue sign. So I picked him up, put him in the basket, and off we sped. I was able to start that engine, give me a little extra boost, and soon outran that mountain lion. And I looked back as the fishermen and the railroad crew and the mountain lion all stood amazed and puzzled at what they'd seen. But I felt good as I tied my red bandana out like a Schwinn rider in the sky.
And you expect me to believe that as true?
Well, Paul.
That's a good story, Larry. But isn't that part of the Missouri State Liars Contest?
Coming up on the 16th will be the Missouri State Liars Contest. And you might hear that story or others similar to it.
Yeah, that's good. At the Missouri State Liars Contest 2016, where would that be?
It'll be here in Columbia at the Columbia Library, 10 o'clock on the 16th.
So people can come in and watch.
Oh, yes.
All right. We're out of time, Larry. If people want more information about you or your stories, how do they get them?
Well, they can contact me at brownstory@hotmail.com. Look at my website, brownstory.com.
Okay, and that's no lie.
That's the truth.
That's the truth. Larry Brown. Always a pleasure having you here, Larry Brown. I really enjoyed that story.
Thanks,
Monday, we've got Mel Zelenik on with us. If there's something you would like to hear or see, I'd love to hear from you. Just drop me an email. That's pepperp@missouri.edu. Bye-bye.